been organizing on Kerala and the world economy. And this afternoon, we are going to have a very interesting discussion on a topic of extreme current importance, which is being discussed in our newspapers, television channels, etc., for quite some time. And we have two very important resource persons to speak for and against a proposition that I'm going to put forward to them. And this proposition actually concerns the Silver Line project, or the semi-high-speed rail project, which the government of Kerala is in the process of planning. And just to give you a very quick thing about this project, this is a rail project which will go from Trivandrum to Kasaragod in the north, and it covers a distance of approximately 530 kilometers, and it will traverse across 11 districts out of the 14 districts of the state. And what is important is that the train is able to cover this distance of about 530 kilometers in about 4 hours, as against the currents. If you use the conventional trains, it will take about 12 hours to cover the same distance. So enormous amount of saving of time. And in terms of that, resources and massive increase in productivity, etc., and so on. Okay. Now, the total proposed investment cost of this project, according to the detailed project report, is about 64,000 crores, which works out to, at current GSDP levels, about 7% of our GSDP. Or if you don't like to have GSDP in the denominator, and if you take the total remittances which is coming to Kerala, this is almost like 65% of that remittances will be spent on this one big project. Okay. Now, this project is coming for a lot of discussion. So what I'm proposing to the two panelists are a semi-high-speed rail system, as the one proposed by Government of Kerala, is very critical to the development of Kerala. Okay, so that's the proposition. Now, to speak for the proposition, I invite Dr. Thomas Isaac, and whom I will very briefly introduce because all of you know him. But he is a very distinguished alumnus of the center, has been a member of the faculty here, twice Minister of Finance in the Government of Kerala. And now, of course, we consider him as he's a honorary fellow of our center. Okay, of course, he does have many other feathers to his cap, but I will only count this honorary fellowship of the center. Now, to oppose him, to speak against the proposition that I put forward, we have Professor K.P. Kannan, who also is a very distinguished member of the CDS community. He has been a member of the faculty of the center right through its beginning, almost 50 years ago, and he has been a director of the center as well in the early part of 2000. A member of a very important committee on unorganized enterprises at the central government level, and has been a very continued student and researcher of Kerala's economy for a very long period of time, and has published quite extensively in this area. And he's also a honorary fellow of our center. So we have two honorary fellows of the center, one who is going to speak for the motion and one against. Now, the rules of the debate, now that I have put a proposition, it now becomes a debate, is Isaac gets 30 minutes to speak for the motion, and Kannan immediately after that gets another 30 minutes. Then we can have 4 or 5 questions from the floor to each of the speakers. They should direct the questions to each of the speakers. And these questions may be asked by raising your hand. You can see the hand raise button at the extreme right-hand side of the bottom panel of your WebEx software. And if you're challenged in doing that, you can put your question in the chat box, and that will get read out. Okay, and it'll be on a first come, first served basis. And given the time, we will only take about 4 or 5 questions per speaker. So that will take about 15 to 20 minutes is what we have allotted to all the question answers. And then the two panelists will get 5 minutes each to reply. Okay, so that's how. So now I invite Professor Dr. T.M. Thomas Isaac to speak for the motion that a semi-high-speed rail system of the type that is proposed by Government of Kerala is very critical to the development of Kerala.
Professor Sunil Mani, Professor K.P. Kannan, and I think we have a very distinguished audience for this debate. Esteemed colleagues and friends, I speak for the proposition. I support the proposition for 4 reasons. 1, Kerala is very important, vital for a balanced transport system in Kerala. 2, such a transport system would contribute significantly to the growth process in Kerala. 3, and this argument may be surprising, I consider a semi-high-speed rail to be best environmental option that is available to us. And finally, it is a financially viable project. Now, after this, I will move on to take up certain objections which have not been covered while presenting my arguments. Like, for example, whether it will lead to a debt trap, what would be the social impact, whether we are using appropriate technology, and so on. Now, let me start with a larger canvas of Kerala's development process. Those of us who have been serious are very familiar with the Kerala development experience, which in a nutshell, in brief, is the redistributed development strategy that we have been pursuing. 1, increasing the wages, which means redistribution of income, redistribution of land, the land reforms, which are redistribution of assets, and public provisioning of social services, which all have contributed together to providing a decent life for the citizens in Kerala. I don't want to elaborate more on this. Now we also understand the investment made in human resources have enabled us to make use of the opportunities of employment outside, which resulted in significant inflow of remittances, an acceleration of the growth, so much so per capita income of Kerala is 50% of the national average. Now there are 2 challenges at this juncture. 1, the second generation problems related to the service sector and also the livelihood. Second, the problem of educated unemployment. Regarding the first, we have chosen the path of democratic decentralization and our experience so far has been very positive. Now, regarding the second, that's where I think our discussion will start. I'm outlining this to show this is a part of overall development strategy of Kerala, not something standalone project. So now, how to address the problem of educated unemployment? It would mean much higher investment in industries which are more attuned with our human and natural resources, say knowledge industries, service industries, skill-based industries, and value-added industries. So this investment has to be attractive. We have to promote the startups in these sectors and also create a kind of infrastructure so that our young people who are appropriately skilled do not have to go for seeking employment outside, but can take advantage of the gig economy and get employment within Kerala itself. Now, what stands in the way of this transition or transformation? There are many factors, but I think the most important factor is the infrastructure deficit. Now look at this. Our roads are so cluttered. That average speed of in Kerala's national highway, state highways is half that of other rest of the country. Take our say electricity backbone. This 220 kV, you need minimum 540 kV to wheel in the electricity from rest of the states in India. Or you take our industrial parks, they are on 1970s vintage. I can go on narrating this, and I'll stop here. So this has got to be overcome. So we have evolved a strategy because we cannot find sufficient resources in the budget because of our commitment to social sectors. That is said to be a debt waste infrastructural development. Now, Kannan fears, Professor Kannan fears that it will lead to debt trap and so on. I will take it up at the end of the presentation, my arguments. Now, let's move from here, my first argument. That given the scenario, the transport sector, which is very crucial infrastructure, if you have to have a balanced transport sector, you need a semi-high-speed rail. Why? I do not need to present any data. Everybody knows Kerala has become virtually a mono-mode transport system of roads. 90% of traffic is roads. This is unsustainable. With the vehicles growing at 10% per annum, whatever roads you build, you find that sooner or later, say another 5 years, it becomes cluttered. You need a transport, mass transit transport, which would move the car riders, particularly long distance car riders, from the roads to the public transit system. Now, that doesn't automatically mean K-rail, because there are other rail options, like the existing broad gauge in Kerala. But unfortunately, the existing broad gauge in Kerala, even if it is double lane, which is going on, about 40% of the length is curved. So much so there are restrictions of speed. Sometimes some sectors as low as 20%, 20 kilometers per mile. In fact, average speed of train on Kerala tracks is less than half of the same trains riding, traveling in the rest of India. Now, no amount of modernization is going to solve this problem. Problem created by the original track laid according to the topography. Now, if you want to straighten this curve, many of the curves are particularly in the urban areas. You take a Google map and look at the railway track in Koilon town. It's like a V-shaped thing. Or you take Shonur and Thrissur, say U-shaped. It just can't straighten them unless you are able to spend that much money, and railways have made it clear they are not interested. So what do you do? Therefore, an independent semi-high-speed rail corridor north-south becomes the only solution possible. Now, for two reasons. One, it is cheaper, per kilometer 2.75, much lower than, say, airfare or first AC or second AC, and of course car. Now, it is also important when we consider this, yet look into the time saved. The time has an opportunity cost, even for the poorest people. And many of the opponents of semi-speed semi-speed train do not accept that even the poor person's time has an opportunity cost. Now, if you take the data from the British, England, say, no, not England, say San Francisco to Los Angeles, the calculations, HSR is not there. Car takes 7 hours, 20 minutes. Plane 5 hours, 20 minutes. This 25 hours, 20 minutes also includes the waiting time in the airport and so on, checking in and checking out, etc. And HSR train would take only 3 hours, 10 minutes. So if you take in the additional time required for stopping, fueling, and so on and so forth, time taken by high-speed rail would be much lower relative to the modes. Now, if you factor in the price of the time, you take it 100 rupees per hour, assuming a skilled worker in Kerala gets 800 rupees, then you will understand why a migrant worker from Eastern India often flies from Cochin airport to Guwahati. Now he will have to pay 5,730 rupees as flight fare. But if he's taking, say, a third AC train, it's only 2,640. But if it costs 100 rupees per hour, the time cost to be 5,700 hours, and he will have to spend the opportunity cost included, it will be 8,340. While as flight, it will be 6,305. Again, for the sleeper class, if you take, still it will be advantageous to fly. So I can also demonstrate to you the time needed for traveling from, say, Cochin to Kozhikode. The moment you factor in the time, cost 100 rupees per hour, the whole economics changes. And therefore, I argue that an appropriate transport mix for Kerala would be strengthening the existing waterways, roadways, broad gauge, but also add to it a semi-high-speed rail. Because that's the only way we can move away the long-distance car riders from the roads and ease the pressure to increase and never widen the roads in Kerala. So that's my first argument. Second, this connectivity, high-speed connectivity, is going to accelerate growth. Now I have with me a dozen papers, empirical papers, studying the impact of high-speed rail in China and some of the European countries. Well, you see a high correlation between high-speed connectivity and growth in relation to regions, in relation to cities. Now in Kerala, if you look, our growth pole is Cochin metropolis. Next growth pole is going to be the whole Kannur, Kasaragod area centered around Kannur airport, requiring something like 10,000 acres there, land is cheap and so on. That's the second. Third would be the Vidinyan linked ring road and the logistics parks and knowledge cities and other industrial towns that were being planned. And of course, there is in between Kottayam, Thrissur and so on. And of course, Thrissur is connected to the Palakkad and Coimbatore industrial corridor. An arterial road linking these three main centers of growth would be very important for the development of these centers and transforming Kerala economy. Now I would even say another more important, I'm going to try, there are people who have suggested that new tourism development is going to be in the north and therefore need a fast connector and so on. But let me say something. Kerala growth is decelerating, particularly in the more recent period. One doesn't know for certain because the impact of COVID cannot be separated out. But Kerala is one region which has had the harshest impact of COVID. Now, this elementary macroeconomy is that you need a big stimulus to push the regional economy out. And therefore, you have 70,000 crores in KIFBI, you have the 60,000 crores in the K-Rail, you have the industrial corridors, and so on, something like 2 lakh crores of rupees to come in a 1 decade period, which is going to push Kerala's growth path to a higher level. So I would argue this is very important for the development of Kerala, the economic growth in Kerala, and also from a macroeconomic perspective. Third, let me say, this is the most efficient energy, and the most environmentally friendly option that is available. Now, I don't want to go into a whole lot of details. You measure the carbon footprint. I hope there'll be no difference with this, Prof. Kannan. Now I'm saying there are 3 components. I'll take all the 3 into consideration. The carbon footprint at the time of construction of the rail track and 2, carbon footprint while manufacturing the rolling stock. 3, carbon footprint while running of the train. Now, I will compare it with the road, 2-lane road, to keep the expenditure within low. Construction phase. K-rail would be, say, 8.21 gram carbon CO2 per passenger kilometer. While for road construction it will be much lower, 0.7 gram per passenger kilometer. For the rolling stock, it will be 0.99 gram per passenger kilometer in K-rail and 20.9 for manufacturing cars and so on for a comparable capacity travel per passenger kilometer. And for the operation of the train is going to be 6.5 gram per passenger kilometer, while it's 130 grams per passenger kilometer. Total K-rail in its 30-year lifespan, the carbon footprint per passenger kilometer would be 15.7 grams. 15.7 grams, while that of the road would be 151.6 grams. The K-rail carbon footprint is 1/10 of the road here. This is even the inevitable fact that you need an alternative. This is the alternative. This is the most environment friendly mode of transport. And compared to road or say a flight aeroplane, except for water transport. So, but then there are 3 types of, and I can go on presenting this data, international data regarding the carbon footprint of various modes of transport. From out of time, I'm not entering that. But the argument is put now, Kerala is flood prone, and therefore a north-south embankment is going to create a big problem. Now, first of all, water does not flow like in waves, one strike to the another. It flows through rivers, streams, canals. And you should ensure they are not abridged in any manner. You should ensure the smooth flow. After all, the K-rail runs along the existing rail track embankment from half the Kerala, from Tirur to Kasaragod. So it shouldn't create any obstruction to water flow than what is now already available. For the rest of it, in the southern Kerala, more than embankment, it is on pillars. So when I detail the environment appraisal, we can ensure, take into consideration last flood level, that sufficient provision is made for water flow. That's a solution for that. Now, a second argument is that it is going through ecologically fragile landslide areas, nothing here. Half the Kerala, there is already existing train running. It does not go through any environmentally sensitive area or CRZ area, no. But there are certain portions of wetland systems, etc. Traverse. We should look around and see how it can be protected, how it can be minimized. And lastly, the argument is that Western Ghats are going to be destroyed because all these stones are to be procured from the. No. You just take a map of the existing, say, quarries in Kerala. None of them are. Only 10% are the Western Ghats. The rest are on the Midland area. After 50,000 kilometers of railroads are being built in Kerala, in India, all require stones. Our 500 kilometers is such a small, minuscule portion of that. So I think these are exaggerated fears, and they can be. Now, time is running short. I make a just statement. The IERR is 24%, much higher than 14%. The financial internal rate of return is 8.34%. And therefore, I will just make a statement that from the available data, they are financially viable. Now, you may say, no, it is not going to be viable. Fine. 60,000 crores are being invested in the national highway now widening. What is the profitability of that? Simple question here. What is the profitability of that? Of course, some toll is going to be collected by central government. But central government is providing a viability gap funding for land acquisition alone 23 lakh crores of rupees. 23,000 crores of rupees. And other viability gap in the future. Where do you do that? So even if it is not fully viable in the sense it gives a return in the short-term period, the sustainability is so much as shown by IERR, I think we should go for that. Now going very quickly to the objections, social impact, let me say, land acquisition is going for road widening, national highway road widening. For gate pipeline, is there a single strike going on in Kerala? Any trouble? There is a big agitation going on in Trivandrum. Do you know for that? Government had promised to take 100 acres of land for the technical university. Government of finance department shut it down and said only 20 acres are required. Strike is going on to say that all the 100 acres must be acquired. So for some time, there's kind of misgivings propagated by people agitating. But when you talk to them, tell them, I think social impact, the package for compensation and total rehabilitation is big. Second, though this time is running short, this debt trap business, I hope Professor Kannan will explain to me. When a state government, all state governments in India are working under FRB Act and you cannot borrow more than 3%, how Kerala alone can go into debt trap? No state government can borrow more than 3%. Second, now that money is not sufficient for investment, which I described. Therefore, we have innovated an institution, KIFBI, to which government of Kerala has guaranteed half the motor vehicles tax for future. And this institution securitizes its future income flow, borrows now and invests. How can that ever lead to debt trap? It can lead to debt trap only if they invest much more than they can chew, the sense much more than the money in future government of Kerala is going to give them. So you have asset liability matching. You have a curve which gives the assets of the company, the flow of income from government of Kerala, and another graph which gives the liabilities in terms of payments to be made, and you always ensure projects you take up are below the asset line. How can it lead to? See, you can think in these terms only if you think in terms of business as usual. Kerala will always be like this, with a good education, healthcare, and some. No. The state of Kerala, people of Kerala deserve something better. We have to move to a higher level of economic growth. And for this, I think you have to bold decisions, just like Kerala adopted a unique path when it chose to invest in social sector. Today, the challenge is to build up this infrastructure and move up to a higher one. And finally, there is objection that Kerala has no tradition of construction in anything in time. I do remember Kannan was the one who had the study of our irrigation projects, which at that time we termed as silver jubilee projects. None of them completed before they completed the golden jubilee project. That's true. That's a tradition you have to change. Not that this has been the Kerala tradition, therefore we'll be always this like this. No. Now you have a tradition taking place. The national highway is going to be completed in 2 years here. Took 14 years to reach here, but now it will be completed in 2 years. Gale pipeline was languishing for 10 years, no, 7 years. And now it has been completed in 1.5 years. Once it's restarted. This is the new style that we have got to bring into Kerala. So I think I am going to rest my arguments. I don't want to take extra time. I think I have got 4 more minutes to take. See, now this may not be the final word. There may be problems with the DPR. Calculations may not be right. Fine. We should relook at it, examine it. Anyway, final approval has got to come yet from the railway board. If anybody doubts the calculations there, well, write them down, calculate, make alternative projections, send to the railway board. Yeah, that's the way it should be done. But now, having done no such exercise, having the doubts, whether it be done, whether it be manipulated, this or that, you want everything to be stopped. Stopped what? All work that is going on here is home truthing. You have a LIDAR survey. And now you have to do home truthing, ground truthing. Where exactly is it? Is right. Without that, on the ground, putting the alignment and seeing who are within the, say, 20-meter width, how can we ever look at social impact? How can we ever have a close environment appraisal study? So some people have taken the presumption they have all knowledge of it, and they have determined it should not proceed any further. Sorry, that cannot be accepted. And therefore, let's have debate. We'll take to the public. We'll debate with the public. And I am certain people seem to reason. People do not want to stagnate at 7. They want to go forward. Young people want to have a better life. And the left wants to say, yes, we will provide you a better life. Much better than now. With decent job, which is very, very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Isaac. You had actually another 2 minutes, but anyway, I think you have summarized everything well. And so now, without much ado, I invite Professor Kannan to speak against the motion.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you, Professor Sunil Mani, for organizing this discussion or debate, what you call it, and with my former colleague and a public personality like Dr. Thomas Isaac. I want to greet everyone here because I can see distinguished names of experts here. So the honors of Dr. Thomas Isaac is not only on me to get convinced, but also to the other members who are listening, not to speak of the 39 other signatories of the open letter to the Chief Minister. But anyway, that's a very aside. Let me share with you a few slides because that will save my time and also focus the discussion. So I'm sharing my uh, PowerPoint. Can you see this?
Yeah, we can see it. You can do the slideshow. Otherwise, this is fine.
Where is the slideshow?
It's in the bottom portion of your screen.
Okay, bottom portion of my screen. Okay. Let me just see.
Not there, not there. The bottom. The way you normally do a slideshow.
Oh, yes, yes. I know. But this comes in between. I don't know what is wrong with this.
Anyway, I have a suggestion that this is fine. We can see it very clearly.
You can see
yeah.
it.
Yes.
You can see it, no?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can see it.
Okay. Now, why am I against the proposed silver line for Kerala? Now, I start with the fundamental principles of planning for development because Kerala claims to be a state which takes planning seriously. The first thing is, should this particular form of high-speed rail, when I say high-speed, it's a semi-high-speed rail, should it get the highest priority in Kerala's current context of development challenges? Certainly no. But then you will ask me why. The reason is that Kerala has gone through or going through two traumatic periods. One is the great floods of 2018, followed by another massive flood in 2019. After which there was a great deal of state initiative in responding to the immediate crisis and a call for solidarity, which the people of Kerala showed. And United Nations assisted because it's a joint team between UNDP and the government of Kerala, prepared a post-disaster needs assessment report, where it was clearly highlighted that Kerala needs to move fast on repair and recovery of the damaged ecological and other assets. I don't want to go into the details of the damage, but it is extensively documented and said within 3 years it is doable with a modest amount of rupees 33 crores. I don't know what has happened, although I am a member of the High Power Advisory Council. We have not been told about the progress in these recovery measures. We also don't know what is the amount collected. We only know that the government rushed for external loan from the World Bank, from the ADB, and from the German bank in the name of rebuilding Kerala. How much has been spent? What has been the progress in ecological restoration and regeneration? We do not know. The second traumatic event, exogenous shock, if I may say so, is the COVID pandemic, that it has affected all over the world, particularly our country and our state. And we are going through a much more difficult period of time than the rest of India for reasons that we still do not know. And we need to have a proper and more extensive preventive healthcare system. We have a very good healthcare system, including the state system, which is oriented towards curative care. These hospitals, people even claim, they clamor for more inpatient beds. For inpatient beds in the primary healthcare system, rather than using the primary healthcare system as a preventive healthcare. I would put these two as the most important things, but I'm sure there may be other. But it's also important, if you want to address these two important urgent agenda, you need to strengthen your public finance, which is in a pathetic situation. I will come later as to how much we are really losing in terms of taxable money, which is not reaching the public exchequer. Now, what I want to ask Dr. Thomas Isaac, since he has quoted a lot of literature, which I agree with, in a sense of consulting literature for the argument.
Oh,
I would like him to tell me that is speed of transport a critical barrier to economic development? Is there any literature worth its salt which says among all other critical barriers, speed is an important barrier, if not the important barrier? I have not seen. In his recent booklet, he has extensively extolled the growth performance of China and Japan. And as he himself has written, and we all know that China started China started the high-speed railway system only after 2007. Well, it started one in 2003, but in a significant way in 2007. And he told us that growth has been quite positive in terms of correlation with speed of transport of the railways and the growth performance. I'm quite amazed. I would like to see the literature. China grew much faster between 1978 and 2003 or 2007 than after, when it has got the 40% share of the high-speed railways in the world. So I don't know what kind of correlation that you can get. For the sake of argument, let me assume that transport is an important priority. Why do we continue to neglect? We, in the sense we in Kerala, continue to neglect inland water and coastal shipping. There is no haste, there is no excitement, there is no massive investment, and these are ecologically much more, I suppose, friendly than the one based on road or rail or air. Now, it is also important to address, in my view, I don't know what our friends here would think, that there is a much more critical traffic congestion problem within towns and cities, especially during working hours. And you will take 1 hour from here to go to the railway station, and from the railway station to Ernakulam 1 hour. What is really the advantage? So local transportation system also craves for attention. But I would like to simply or humbly ask Dr. Tamya, since he was in power for quite some time, that have you ever consulted your own research institution called National Traffic Planning and Development, or whatever it is, NATPAC, in while designing or while formulating the project for K-Rail? Did they say that speed of transport of rail system in a particular fashion or a standalone system is the most important priority in the transport sector? Or have you completely ignored the existence of NATPAC? Let me also say, for the sake of argument, assuming railways need priority within the transport sector, isn't it more cost effective to strengthen and expand the existing Indian railway system to which Kerala is a part? I'm not a railway engineer, so I can't make my own suggestions, but living legends like Sridharan, and also people who have spent their whole lifetime career in the Indian railways like Alok Kumar and many others, have said unequivocally that there is enough scope for expanding the existing railway system in Kerala. You need to spend more. So it is an incremental investment, and according to Mr. Sridharan, it will take you 10 to 15% of this 65,000 that you want to spend. That means around 10,000 crores of rupees. I will not go into the details of that for want of time. What you are now proposing is a new railway system. And let me underline that. This is not a railway line. This is a new railway system. Because you have decided to go for an alien technology, it requires different types of tracks, different rolling stock, work sheds, shunting yards, offices, stations, everything is independent of the Indian railway system. So the entire paraphernalia constitutes itself as a Kerala railway system. Is that what you want? The answer is very clear. You are dictated by the choice of technology. And that choice of technology is decided by the lender, because you want the money from the external lender. You have no other alternative but to accept the lender's diktat about the choice of technology, which is the most crucial factor in the proposal to establish an independent railway system, not a line. Now, I would come to this because Isaac has raised this very relevant question of debt trap or heavy debt burden, which I have been talking about. Now, it is because you stuck the ceiling, and of course, that is set up by the government of Kerala as 3 to 3.5% of the state income for every state, and now it is being relaxed a bit because of COVID pandemic. You opened an off-budget window, and you said it is an outside the budget window. An off-budget window on which the state legislature has no legal power to decide on the projects, monitor it, and give their opinion. Of course, they are being given an annual report. That's not saying as they have legislative power. But the budget money is used every day, every year. And I don't know for how long, whether it is for in perpetuity. It is like, the drummer gets the money, the drum gets the beating. So here the drum is the legislature. Now, let me also say that I'm more worried than the debt trap about the declining tax collection efficiency, and about which Dr. Isaac knows much more than me because he was an insider. Now, if I calculate in historical terms, I'm not bringing any normative potential income. I'm not making about the studies which in 3 years we did. Thomas Isaac himself did a paper along with Mohan. And earlier, one of my students did, where we all said it's about 30 to 35% is the leakage from the tax system. His own paper said about 22 to 29%. I am setting it apart. I am looking at the historical performance of the state of Kerala and found that for every 100 rupees, we collected 12 rupees in between 75 and 86 for about a little more than a decade. And subsequently, it came down to 9 rupees per 100 rupees. So it's a ratio, 9%. 18 to 19 to 2021 recent years, it has come down to 8.7 rupees for every 100 rupees. But I have argued elsewhere that Kerala's disposable income is not only its domestic state income. You should also include the annual flow of remittances, which I call modified state income. If you do that, the ratios are 11 to 11.3% to a decline to 7.8 and a further decline to 7.7. So if you estimate that the loss, for example, in a year like 2020, for which we have data, it's about 29,000 to 33,000 crores. So if you had collected the full, if you had maintained the tax collection efficiency of the 70s, you would have got 29 to 33,000 crores more than what you already have. And mind you, tax collection is not imposing new tax. The people pay tax, but the establishments, the traders, business, industry, and a whole lot of people who are supposed to hand over this tax to the government are the people who evade the tax. So it directly questions your ability to govern from a public finance point of view. I will not say further. I would like to be challenged and disproved because that will be a good outcome. There is no credible explanation as to why government of Kerala do not want to consider the cost-effective option of the additional development of the Indian railways in Kerala, signal modernization, further limited land acquisition, additional lines, which has already been announced by Government of India as part of their larger plan, not because of they love Kerala. At a time when India has developed its own semi-high-speed train 18 system. You and your party and your government, in historical terms, stand for self-reliance. How come that you have completely given up your self-reliance ideology and is opting for a Japanese vintage technology of the 1960s? 80% of train 18 technology is indigenous. It's only 20% import intensive. Don't you see the linkage effects of the train, although it takes place all over India? Isn't it the best strategy for a country like ours? So that we create demand for our own capital goods machines. So this makes the intention suspect in the eyes of the people. I will only say that much. I will not say anything more on that. But my worry is that if this Kerala model of high-speed transportation system, establishing its own independent standalone line, if this is followed by every other state in India, then it will be a disaster since there will be no interoperability because every will be disconnected with the Indian railway system, loosening economic integration with serious political consequences. I hope Kerala will not be a model in this connection. Now, let me go. I didn't go to the project per se because my argument is before the project. This is not the priority for Kerala. We have far too many fundamental issues to resolve. Existential crisis out of the floods and environment, ecological fragility of the whole state. We need to do a regeneration. We need to restore our damaged, loss of topsoil, the deforestation, the granite mining, the, soil piping, the flood-prone areas. A lot of people have studied, and one of them here is sitting, Professor Rajendran. I hope he will say something about it. Now, let me go to the project since Dr. Isaac spoke so extensively and eloquently about the merits of the project proposal. My doubts are as follows. Now, the capital cost is 65,000 crores. The Niti Aayog, when they vetted the project, says it is 1.26 lakhs. Why is the government of Kerala not giving us an explanation for this big difference between their estimate and Niti Aayog estimate? Wouldn't it be better for us to know that how much of our money is going to be spent? Who is correct? The capital expenditure, the size of the project, Sunil Mani gave us some interesting figures. Let me give you another interesting figure. The capital expenditure of the government of Kerala for the last 5 years, when Dr. Thomas was as a minister, and I have great respect for him as a minister. He's a workaholic. He's dedicated to his job. And I'm not saying this out of just, etiquette. I mean it. But it's the system that matters. He could spend 47,000.9 crores of rupees for 5 years as capital expenditure. 5 years capital expenditure between 2015 and 20. 1 year is the last UDF government, the 4 years where the LDF government was in power. In present value terms, if you adjust it for inflation, it will be around 65 to 66,000 crores of rupees. So the 5 years expenditure of the government of Kerala on capital creation for a whole range of hundreds of projects is equal to the one project that they have now proposed. If you go by the Niti Aayog, then it will be 2 times. Our own revenue, the revenue that government of Kerala collects from its own sources, is close to 69,000 crores in 2020, which is close to the proposed expenditure on this single project. Let me now come to the credibility of the costs and time, because he also talked about it, and I'm very glad that he talked about the time and cost overruns. Is there any public project in Kerala that has not undergone revisions to the original estimate? No. Is there any public project completed on time? No. If that is the empirical truth, how can Dr. Thomas Isaac say that this cost figure and their time figure, on which their internal rate of returns, etc., depend, that he is taking it for granted, taking it as given, and accepts this without any reservation? So it's a very serious question that we need to have credibility based on our own performance. What is our own performance? Now, tell you. I have that, as he mentioned, not only the irrigation projects, myself and Dr. Vijay Mohan Pillai, we together wrote this book on plight of the power sector in India with a focus on Kerala. One of the chapters came as a CDS working paper 320 in 2001, where we looked at the average time overrun of 20 power projects. The actual time divided by the original estimated time, you get 2.6 times is the time overrun. That means if you had originally estimated 1 year, you took 2.6 years. For cost overrun, the ratio between actual and original is 3.8 times, close to 4 times. That means the capital for every 1 rupee of capital that you intended to create, you ended up by spending 3.8 rupees. That means 2.8 rupees is the wastage because of cost overrun. If I take that, and this is from the electricity board figures, they are a little more better than the irrigation, which is horrendous. As you can see, the time overrun of irrigation projects, which I am now doing a study, is about 5 times. And the cost overrun is 25 times. So you can imagine we intended to spend 6.49 crores for 15 projects. The average cost for a project in this 15 group was 6.49, but we ended up spending on an average 160.7 crores of rupees, 25 times. So even if I ignore this irrigation, which I just cannot ignore, and go by the least time overrun or cost overrun, then what you are saying, Dr. Isaac, is that the capital expenditure of Kerala, which is less than 1% of the state income, is actually 30% is the actual capital creation of what you really spent. Not even 1/3, because the 2/3 is cost overrun. So we lost so much money by way of wastage, time and cost factors, that we ended up creating capital out of an expenditure that is only 30% of what we have really spent. And that, to me, is a worrying factor when I look at the prospects of this humongously large project. Now, cost overrun, if you factor this cost overrun, let me take the KSCB's cost overrun, then your K-Rail, which is now 65,000 according to Government of Kerala, will end up as 2.47 lakhs. If you say there will be no cost overrun and you will give a guarantee in the assembly, that's a different thing. If you go by the Niti Aayog figures of 1.26 lakh crores, then you will end up with a cost of 4.79 lakh crores for this project. If you ask me personally, because this is only based on electricity project, I would like to take a weighted average of all cost overruns in all projects. The factor will be much more than this. So that's one reason why I have said and written that this will take several times the cost and time that has been put in the DPR. Now, let me say, okay, no, we are now changing. We are changing and we are going to do things faster. And we will move to a Sridharan standard. What is a Sridharan standard in Kerala? Kochi Metro. Because he gave the leadership to the completion of the. He completed in Kochi Metro 25 kilometers in 6 years. That means for every year, he could complete only 4.17 kilometers of track for metro rail. If that is the average efficiency of Kochi Metro construction, it will take 127 years for the K-Rail to complete. You might even laugh, and even I laugh. How can we ever think of that? Unless you are going to tell me that there will be a simultaneous Kochi Metros in all the districts, which I think the supply conditions will never allow you because of the massiveness of the materials required. Okay, then you say, no, Kochi Metro is not the real standard, Sridharan standard. Sridharan standard is Delhi standard because he built the Delhi Metro. But it was a much more congenial context there in terms of the geographical terrain as well as administrative ecosystem. Even then, he could complete only 357 kilometers in 25 years in 3 phases of the Delhi Metro. And mind you, he completed the first phase of the Delhi Metro 3 years in advance. But the third phase went into cost, little bit of time overrun and cost overrun. Even then, they completed 14.3 kilometers per year on an average. So if you apply the Delhi standard of Sridharan, assuming that you will get 1 or 2 Sridharan for your K-Rail, excuse me, you will take 37 years in the best case scenario to complete this K-Rail project. If I am wrong, because I am giving you empirical figures based on historical data and not ex ante figures that you have quoted by taking Sistra's all figures unquestionably. Now, DPR is an incomplete document. And we now all know, and thank you for thank you means when I say you is government of Kerala for releasing the DPR, even though a bit late in the day. Because there are several experts have examined it from an engineering point of view, technical point of view, from an economic point of view, from a carbon emission point of view, a whole range of things. And one of the serious issues there, and you have again, I think, Isaac, you quoted the IRR, internal rate of return, financial wise, economic rate of return. You are a big man in public, I am not. But let me take you back to your student days. When I gave my lectures on project evaluation in the 70s in the center, when you were a student, 76 and 78, what did I say about rate of return? The internal rate of return of any project, especially ex ante evaluation, is a product of what you put in as costs and benefits. So it is, if your cost and benefit figures are credible, then your internal rate of return figures are credible. If it is not credible and people doubt it, then you cannot even quote this internal rate. What credibility can be attached to this 24% economic internal rate of return? You think all the costs have been properly factored into it? What about the costs of loss of output from the existing land, which will be taken over by the KRL?
Professor Kannan, you have 5 minutes more.
Okay, 5 minutes. In terms of the future stream of income that it will generate, agriculture, industry, trade, shops, hotels, all kinds of. Isn't it a relevant economic cost? And mind you, the difference between economic cost and financial cost is not money cost. You just net out the taxes and subsidies in the economic analysis. You put the resource costs and resource benefits and value it in appropriate price terms, whichever is the agency which is incurring the cost or getting the benefits. That is the difference between economic rate of return and financial rate. Financial rate of return is that's what the company is bothered about. But the government should be bothered about the economic rate of return. And I have seen that when KSEB is the one which is going to supply the electricity, they also said they have to construct track substations, which is a capital cost. It's not factored in the DPR because it is going to be spent by the KSEB, just as in the costs, in the benefit forgone side, that you are not valuing the output lost in the land that is going to be taken over. I can give very many other examples of the cost. And a serious doubt about the ridership that you talked about. 80,000 people will be traveling every day in this train from different points to Kasaragod and back. The feasibility says only 40,000. How did it jump twice in the DPR? What kind of, I've been talking with my collaborator, research collaborator, Dr. Ravindran, who himself is one of the foremost official statisticians in this country, about sampling, about designs, and we talk about NSS, we talk about in the national income, and I talked to him today about the survey design, and he has some questions, he said, and he's here today, and he might be raising that. What kind of a sample you got? Less than 400 people to assess the ridership? I don't know how can you, as an economist, Dr. Thomas Isaac, believe in these figures in DPR? As a finance minister, did you ask them, interrogate them about their internal rate of return? Did you ask them, have you accounted for all relevant costs and relevant benefits? How did you do it? You should have done that because you are not just a politician. You are also an economist, and that's your advantage. Let me also say, Sunil Mani, give me 2 more minutes. I'm going to finish. The most important one, I think, is the environmental impact. You refer to only the carbon emission and also some other aspects. Let me give you a typology of this. One is the micro level environmental impact. What happens to the immediate land and surroundings. And that's a point of great worry. I will not elaborate, but I will quote summary. Then the regional state level, because of massive graniting required, granite mining that is required for the supply of granites, flood management on a statewide or Western Ghats way, because you have 300 kilometers embankment of varying height. That I'm not saying it is 8 meters everywhere. And then comes the global impact of carbon footprint. I would rather, of course, I would give a lot of emphasis on carbon. I will not go into the figures that you gave because I said, and this is a subject I'm teaching now at the LBC, the carbon footprint, the conversion depends on the technology mix of each country. And in India itself, it might differ from Kerala to other places. And your quotations, I don't know, I'm not an environmental scientist, but I know that the figures don't match with other published figures, because they said in China, the per passenger kilometer emission is about 46 grams, not the, what did you say? Something like 8 or 9 grams. I'm not sure. Now, what about the list, the bill of materials that are required, the quantity, huge quantity of materials that are required? Isn't it important? I'll come back to that. And that is not there in the economic evaluation. Economic evaluation is not only concerned with generating a number as rate of return. It is also to do with resource accounting. How much of resources? From where? What are the supply conditions? What is the guarantee that it will be given in time? And what is the linkage effect? Will there be a relative price change if there is a big demand, the scale effect of the quantities? So these are important questions. Let me tell you on the micro impact, environmental impact. I will only quote Professor K.T. Ravindran, one of the foremost urban planners in this country and chairman of the National Urban Art Commission, who was an advisor to the DMRC. He said, on K-Rail, a cursory glance at the EIA, the one which government now has.
You need to summarize it now.
I'm summarizing. Please bear with me for 3 minutes extra. The environmental impact assessment report demonstrates how calamitous the project would be to Kerala's vulnerability. Any linear system of movement, particularly land-based, which is least flexible to accommodate variations in land profile or even curves and deviations, remains the most interventionist on land. We already have a rail and road-based system. Now we are adding one more. I will not, further go into. I have one more quotation by him, but I would like to read out Professor Rajendran's from his writings, just one sentence or 2 sentences. What he said, the soil would have to be compacted and excavated for embankments during construction. The sediment eroded from rail embankments will clog the waterways and affect vegetation. The railway will have to be raised over many long stretches of low-lying land requiring numerous underpasses, leading to erosion and siltation of water sources. Erosion and siltation of water sources. As the lower reaches of the rivers will be blocked or restricted, the future flood scenarios will be much worse. I will not elaborate further on that for lack of time, but let me also give you a taste of the requirement of the quantities, and then let's discuss what impact it will have, if whether Kerala has the scope to source some of them, and how much will it come the rest of India, and at what carbon emission cost. You need 4.2 million tons of steel. You need 3.9, around 4 million tons of cement. You need ballast, the rocks, the granites of varying sizes, 5 million cubic meter, 10 million cubic meter, and 1 million cubic meter sub-ballast. Except geotextile, is a good demand. There's so much of excavation area will be around 10 million cubic meters. So these are the dimensions that one could go into along with the engineers who are there. And you cited the, let me take just a couple of minutes because this is very important, because Thomas Isaac quoted a few literature, which I don't know which are they, where he said there is a very good correlation between speed of transport by rail and economic growth. I'm so surprised. And I already said China's growth was pre-rail, pre-high-speed rail. But let me tell you from, there are not many transport economies, but there are some outstanding ones. And one is, Kenneth Button of the George Mason University. And he took China, Japan, and Spain. They together account for 75% of the high-speed rails in the world. And his main conclusion, I will read and stop. Although politicians and rail enthusiasts have widely supported high-speed rail infrastructure investment as a catalyst for development, academic writings abound with considerable skepticism about the economic value of such investment. Furthermore, the development argument presented in support of HSR has proved to be overly optimistic, and the anticipated economic growth effects have been minimal or even negative, where ex-ante justification has been for a geographical shift of economic activity, typically away from congested to economically deprived locations. The outcomes have seldom been as hoped. I will not read his last conclusion, and you will know that, in these three countries, it proved to be disappointing at fares, tickets, even remotely close to cost recovery. Now, let me ask you just two questions, basic questions. Who in Kerala has demanded high-speed railway between Trivandrum and Kasaragod? Which segment of the population? Did they fight? Did they come in protest? Did they send petitions? And that to an independent standalone system. Number two, have you thought about the opportunity cost of this investment in terms of dispersed number of employment generating green projects, using green technology, thereby strengthening the natural capital, local capital, and enhancing local level employment, especially to the youth between 20 and 39. And those among these 20 and 39 years youth, 10.6 lakh of them have at least a degree, but no job. So you talk about opportunity cost of time, Isaac. I'm amazed. In economic development literature, we taught you opportunity cost of capital. That's the most critical factor in constraining factor in the history of economic development, not of time. And that is news for me when you say time is the critical factor, not the cost of capital or the availability of capital. Now, I'm going to give you a numerical example.
I think
the last one, that is here is, just hold on, Sunil, for a minute. Here is the one example of opportunity cost of capital for K-Rail. Now, I take the high capital sector in the Kerala, that is the public enterprises, where for every employment, rupees 40 lakhs is the capital invested, the latest 2018 figures. If you take the durable employment in K-Rail is 5,000 out of 65,000 crores, which makes it 13 crores per employment. 32.5 times of the capital labor ratio in our entire public sector system. So if you were to invest this 65,000 in the jobs that I have just now mentioned about green restoration and regeneration, we could generate 1,62,000 durable employment. But if the capital cost is taken at Niti Aayog's figures, then the loss of employment by not deploying in the kind of work that I am recommending will be 3,25,000. I will not say anything more. I'm sorry I exceeded a few minutes, but for a subject like this, one has to be a little flexible about time. The opportunity cost of time in debate is not that great. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Professor Kannan. And if you could kindly stop sharing your slide, then we can. So now the floor is open. The way we are going to do is first you can ask questions to Professor Isaac. And let me just remind you that he made 4 important propositions. First, he said the K-Rail is a balanced transport system, and it has got a significant positive contribution to the growth process within Kerala. And it is also the best environmental proposition that you can ever imagine to have. And he has some numbers on the the financial viability of the project. He also said that it will not lead us to a debt trap, and its social impact is very good, and it uses a kind of an appropriate technology, although I did not find many points on that appropriate technology part in his presentation, but I suppose he would add to that. Okay. And so now what I would do is I would welcome questions from the floor. 4 questions to Isaac first. And you should raise your hands, and then I can call you by your name. Okay. Oh, okay. You have raised your hand. Okay, Mr. Ravindran will go first.
Well, I am a statistician by profession, so I look at every number in a context of how those numbers have been derived. Unfortunately, the whole of the report, I didn't find how these numbers have been derived. The entire feasibility, whether economic or financial, is based on some six surveys. They talk of origin destination survey, they talk of tourist survey, they are talking of terminal surveys. There are 6 surveys conducted on 7 classes of travelers. They have not even mentioned at least the sample size of these number, how many observations they had, and what is the sample, even that they are not, and how they have ensured the sample is a representative of the population which they are considering. Did they have a sampling frame, or they have created a sampling frame? None of this has been. So, have been stated in the report. If somebody can enlighten me on this, I will believe this report. Otherwise, it is in statistics we call it lies, damn lies, and statistics, and these are damn lies report.
Okay.
And
thank you.
the numbers are justified.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Ravindran. I think your question was about the sampling procedures for arriving at the ridership number, for instance. And so now I would request the second person to ask the second question to Thomas Isaac. Who would like to ask the second question? Yes, Abdul Erumpan. Yes, Abdul, you could unmute yourself.
Thank you, Sunil. This is Aziz, actually, from University of Groningen. I think I believe in technology and the need to embrace technology, of course. But however, I have 2 related questions to Professor Isaac, 2 of my great teachers at this debate today. The first is that as you mentioned 4 points and focused on the need for this project to take Kerala's growth forward, tapping its human capital and so on. The first question is related to what Professor Kannan has asked already. That is, who is actually needing this to achieve this particular objective? Is it our general population or investors? Why I'm asking this question is that in the former case, you brought the case of a vehicle growing 10% per annum, and you want to shift those car drivers to use this public transportation. Is it realistic to assume that all those passengers will move to public transportation if you bring in this kind of fast train? Because most of those people who are driving the car are not the poorest of the poor in any case. So it is also a function of the rise in income and an attitudinal problem, actually, rather than the lack of alternative opportunities here. So people who will prefer to travel by car are more likely to continue that way, even if we have an alternative option here. That is the first question. The second thing is that now, is it for the investors? Then the question is that for goods transportation and to enhance investment, if that is the point here, do we have any evidence to argue that the reason why Kerala is not attracting investors is lack of a high-speed train? Why do not consider other modes of transportation system and improve the efficiency of our existing system? So the point is that, more concretely asking the point, do we have a list of what kind of economic activities Kerala has or Kerala can pursue that require faster goods transportation? Way back in 2000s, when I did a work with Professor great Professor KKS about Kerala's industrialization, I remember KK has wrote a very strong sentence in the conclusion that Kerala really need to think about the kind of industrialization from the traditional perspective of looking at industrialization. That brings me to the last question, which I want to ask you. Given the rapidly rising importance of the service sector and the knowledge industry in Kerala, which you also acknowledged in your talk, have you considered the developments in the knowledge intensive service sector globally in terms of technologies while jumping into the faster mode of transportation? For instance, we may not even need the physical presence of human capital to do the intellectual and knowledge intense service activities in the future. So taking the economic situation of Keralites, the need of the future, and the pathway for Kerala's economic development, the question is, should be this our priority? So taking all this into account, so I personally think that already we have an unnecessarily large number of airports in Kerala and they're wasting so much of scarce land. So my question is that will it not be an addition to that? Thank you very much. And this is my questions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Aziz, for those questions. Anyone else would like to ask? Yes, Asha Gopinathan, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Okay, I have actually put my questions in the chat box, but because those are not being taken up, let me just say, number one is why this obsession with speed? I don't understand why there is such obsession with speed and equating speed with development and the whole lot of things. I was working in Chitra, Sri Chitra Hospital for 3 years, and all 3 years I had to go to Palakkad to Vaidyamadam for treatment once a month. I used to take the night train and reach Pattambi by early morning, go to have my thing, come back by the night train again, never missed a day of work. I just went on a Saturday night and came back on Monday early morning, never missed a day of work. Anyone who wants to travel in Kerala long distance can take a nice book, read and enjoy the scenery, and it's really lovely. What's the obsession with speed? Number one. Number two, there's changing work patterns. I recently spoke to somebody who owns an IT company in Malayangira of all places, and a beautiful company. And he said all his workers want to be at home now. They don't want to come back even to that beautiful campus. So post-COVID, there's a lot of changes in work patterns. People are moving to their homes, or there's hybrid mode, and that's going to remain. That's going to stay with us for the rest of our lives. So what is this? Again, this obsession with so much commuting. Number three, the psychology of Kerala. As someone who uses trains a lot, I know the Rajdhani used to go from Trivandrum, next stop was Ernakulam, then one more in North Kerala and out of Kerala. But now it stops Trivandrum, Kollam, Alappuzha, Ernakulam, Thrissur, then God knows where, and that is the way it goes. So even this train will become a Chakravandi very soon. Number four, then the next is cost of ticket. I believe the tickets are going to be so expensive that 80,000 people are never going to use it every day. Then the last mile connectivity, somebody else put it on the thing. So let me say that's very important. If your station is going to be in the middle of a lake in Ashtamudi Kyle or Vemrad Kyle or somewhere or other, how are people going to reach there and go back? So the whole purpose is lost. Then the last is, why don't you think of work possibilities closer to your home, where you can either walk or cycle or do some of those things, including take a boat, do those things, which is very, very conducive to Kerala. And I expect the left in Kerala to, really lead forward in these kind of radical reforms. And the last is the thing that Thomas Isaacs talked about, the environment, not destroying the environment. That's not true. This goes through mangroves, and that reduces the, increases the carbon footprint through lakes, all kinds of things. So that is also not true. So I just want to say that if the left in Kerala does not listen to us, people who are allies of the left, then you're surely going to get out of power much sooner and much faster than this train of yours. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Asha, for those nice points. I will now read out one more question, which is in the chat box from Vijay Shankar. He says, Dr. Thomas Isaac has reduced the environmental impact of the Kerala Rail to one summary statistic, carbon footprint, while glossing over the enormous environmental impact the project will have on the already ecologically fragile situation in Kerala. Even the cost of land acquisition, rehabilitation, etc., are not mentioned or given a serious thought. Okay,
can
so
I add my own voice to the comment which is written? Thomas
no,
Isaac is my teacher.
I think you are very clear on that point.
Okay. Okay.
So I think let's have these four questions being answered, and also Thomas Isaac could also answer some of the points which the from the opposition that you have received, so you could also take a few extra points. Please unmute yourself. Unmute.
Yeah. I hope you'll permit me a few more minutes.
Yes.
Now, I'll start with Kannan's two questions at the conclusion of his presentation. The first is the opportunity cost of this investment. What else you could have done with it? Well, if you don't invest in the career, you don't get this money. This is project-linked loan which is permitted by Government of India. Is a Government of India has to permit a state government to borrow, particularly when it is, and this is outside the normal borrowing. They are permitted for this particular project. Therefore, you don't take it up, very well, you lose that money. That's it. Now you need to, there is no meaning in speculating what else you could have done with that money. Okay. First is, then the question, other question you asked is, who has demanded it? And Abdul also raised this question, who has demanded it? Very well, it's not something that has just come on the slide. Since 2009, every movement on this project has found a place in every budget presentation of mine. That's about 8 budgets, sometimes in detail, great detail. And then it was made a part of the manifesto presented for the people. It's not something brought from behind. But then if you are asking me how many people demanded, go on strike for it, etc. Well, is the government to do only what the people strike and make a pressure for that? Government has the legitimate right to look at the long-run perspective for development, place it before the people, which has been done in all these budgets. If somebody do not attend to it, think about it, raise objection to it, well, that's their problem, their demand. The government has done is what it has got to do. So it is not something. But Abdul has raised a very important issue. Very well, who needs this? I, for one, believe everybody's time has a cost. It has a value. And my argument has been, one, if you add that, it's very viable, cost effective. Second, I started my presentation to say there is a need to have more balanced transport structure in Canada. Now, definitely, Kannan, transport has played a very important role in economic development. Whether it be the larger macro swings in the economy that has happened, railroad development in states, or the post-war period autobahns and so on, they have played a very important role in the development process. And in this particular case, it is not possible to have higher speed train on the present track. And the tracks are owned by Government of India. It is not in the priority for the time being to invest in straightening of the tracks in Canada. Therefore, whatever you do, doubling and so on and so forth, on modernizing the signal system, it is not possible to go beyond the level of speed. Very well. Then the next issue that would come is, why do you choose this standalone project? It's not Kerala wants a standalone system here. All the high-speed trains, all the semi-high-speed trains in India, there are 18 of them. The Government of India has given principal times as a sanction, or the DPR has been prepared, or some start of construction. All of them are standard gauge. So Kerala's high-speed, semi-speed train has to be part of this system, high-speed system that is coming up in India. You want the Kerala high-speed train to be outside that system and get linked to the broad gauge in Kerala? So how do you argue that? I'm not saying globally. Globally, 95% of tracks are high-speed or standard gauge. And India government in its wisdom has chosen to be so. And what Kerala has got to do? So now from where you stopped, you didn't want to go into the details, a kind of conspiratorial theory why that is being chosen. Anyway, you didn't articulate it, but it's meaningless. The choice of technology is not made by Kerala government. The whole entire network of a semi-speed, high-speed is on standard gauge. And therefore, now the first question that Kannan asked, what about the priorities of Kerala? None of the priorities are given up. They are all being implemented. And that's why there won't be money within the budget. That's why we go to borrow outside the budget through SPVs and implement it. Therefore, K-Rail does not impinge upon, say, your PDNA, UNPDNA report, that developing the health system in Kerala, education system in Kerala, decentralized development, and so on. It's not at the cost of this development. It's something additional that Kerala needs to have. So, Abdullah said that is it important for the knowledge economy that's going to come? Let me put it this way. What's the size of Kerala? Size of Kerala is something like a Greater Bombay. And if we can have efficient transportation system within the Greater Bombay size, then people all need aggregate to Kochi or Trivandrum. They can sit in their home and work. In fact, an important component of the development strategy is precisely to take advantage of the kind of decentralized employment system that is emerging in the global economy. Now, even for that, Abdul, you require internet connectivity to every household in Kerala. You need to have assured electricity connectivity. Or if you want to work from near home, this is all being done. That's what the KIFBI project is about. Kannan's argument about the loss of income because of inefficiency of tax collection, if there had been all this could have been done without borrowing. When I was the minister in the first time, the taxes grew at an average rate of 18% per annum. It continued for another 2 years at 18%. Then it went down to 10%. Do you know why? It's not the efficiency of collection. It is because entry tax was removed. It became a hemorrhage. Before that, any product brought into Kerala, even for use, can be stopped at the border and tax collected. Once entry tax gone, it's not possible. So for the 10 years, you have 10% growth. Then you have a new taxation system, GST, which is just getting positioned. Now, these are the problems which has to be overcome. But do Kerala have to wait till your revenue deficit goes and everything become consolidated before you can take it a major jump at the capital investment? You're condemning Kerala to the present state it is. I think people of Kerala do not want that. Now, Vijay Shankar, I have not reduced the whole, say, environmental carbon footprint, but you will agree with me that's a concise one number which you easily compare different options available to you. And this has been the major accusation against Kerala, that how do you do it in the era of climate change and so on and so forth. That's why I said. But then I went on to say it doesn't go through, say, environmentally sensitive areas. It is not going to aggravate the flood. I have responded to that. We have got to take environmental issues seriously. And how do you take seriously? Not by abandoning any more future infrastructure development and say now we will unilaterally declare Kerala will remain at the same level of infrastructure development because of we want to reduce the carbon footprint. There is something called climate change justice. Yeah. So the developed countries, they will remain at the level they are. They will continue to increase. And we hold back? No. We will improve. We will be spending more. And our energy consumption will be rising. But still, very responsibly, you will take many other actions to mitigate whatever carbon emission that occurs here. And that's the environmental problem that Kerala government is committed about. Am I taken too much time, Chairman?
No, I think you're on fine.
To
Okay.
Asha, I would only say, very well, time has its value. It has an opportunity cost. If at your leisure you can travel like that, by all means, we will improve the broad gauge. We'll have a double line also, but there should be other option. It's very important. So finally, Abdul's question, you think attitudinal change will take place among the riders, car riders? What happened to America? Why was the railroads destroyed there? It's a public investment policy. They did not invest in railroad. They invested in autobahns. So they developed a transport system which is adhering to the road. Now, what happened to Kerala's waterways, which at one time, at the time of independence, accounted for 90% of the transport and goods as well as people. We just did not invest in it anymore. We invested in early roads. So the intermodal shifting of goods at the jetties became impossible. We never widened the canals so that speedier boats can go. Finally, waterways made into disuse. It's not attitudinal change alone. Yeah. The public policy investment determines your attitude. And I think Kerala, that way, is making a conscious choice to influence the attitude of travel and goods carriage to more environmentally friendly and cost-effective way of transportation. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Ravindran sir, I cannot respond.
Yes, no, Thomas.
Here I will have to do that.
Dr. Isaac, I think you have left out the point by Mr. Ravindran about the sampling procedure.
How can I answer the sampling technique and design and so on? That somebody prepared the report and so on should be able to present. It's unfair to demand that I give you the design, sample design and so on. I hope you will accept that. Just like most of the people, I take the DPR report, of course, critically review it. I have my reservations, you will have your reservations. But if you detail regarding the data, how that was collected and this was collected, well, this is something I cannot respond to. I hope you will agree with me.
Okay.
At least sample size should have been specified. Even that is not specified in the sampling design, forget about it. At least sample size and how it has been selected. At least that should have been mentioned in the report. Even that is missing.
Okay, I think I thank Dr. Isaac for answering all the questions that were raised. And so we would now go take some questions for Professor Kannan. Let me just quickly, I'm not going to summarize what Professor Kannan has said because his was a very rich, comprehensive presentation. But let me try and summarize some of the major points. First, he said, should the high-speed rail project get the highest priority today? And what about our priority for various other things which came up from the mega floods of 2018 and the pandemic which is going on now, and also strengthening of public finance issues. Next, he raised questions about is speed critical to economic growth, and he he referred to some literature also in this particular field, which has not found a positive correlation between speed of travel and the rate of growth of the economy. Okay. Then he thought about why not develop inland waterways and coastal shipping instead of just a high-speed rail system, or a semi-high-speed rail system. And what about the critical traffic problems which are within cities? If you have to get out of the city, to travel by a high-speed train. So what about the traffic problems within the city? Then he was wondering whether is it that at 10,000 crores you can strengthen and expand existing rail system by straightening the curves, etc., and so on, rather than spending 65,000 crores to set up a totally brand new system, which is alien to the state. Then he raised about proposing a new railway system which is completely based on foreign technology, and he raised about the Kerala railway system becoming unique. Of course, Dr. Isaac has now sort of clarified that particular point. And he referred to some public finance questions about off-budget borrowals and the efficiency of tax collection and so on. And he was wondering whether the issue of technological self-reliance, which has been central to both India and Kerala, whether that has been given up, because when the Train 18 technology is available, why not go for that instead of a foreign technology which is based on credit? So it's a kind of a tight purchase that you are actually resorting to. And then, of course, he referred to the big divergence in the capital cost by the Niti Aayog vis-a-vis the Kerala government, time and cost overruns in public sector projects, whether we have a guarantee that this project will be completed on time. And he came out with some numbers which are frightening. So many years for this project to be completed. And then, of course, the ridership data, of 80,000, is that an exaggeration? And environmental impact has been glossed over. The material cost, the amount of steel, cement, etc., which is, where are we going to get this, and what about the environmental impact of producing this cost? And the opportunity cost of capital is something also, and not time. He seems to discount the opportunity cost of time, but rather capital is more important. So now we can take 4 questions to Professor Kannan. We are already running late, and we have another session which is going to start now. So that's why I'm a little sounding a little. So I will start with Mr. Sridhar, because he has been very active in putting a large number of questions in the chat box, and he's been shooting at, I think, both the speakers. So I would request Mr. Sridhar to raise those questions first. Please unmute yourself, Sridhar. Hello. Yeah, I can't. I'm sorry. No, we can't hear you, Sridhar. Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Okay. This is just enough. Okay. Thank you very much for both the speakers and Sunil Mani sir's long time. I was one of those very, purposefully fortunate person to actually read both the pre-feasibility report, the feasibility report, and the summary of the DPR even before the state government could bring out and publish it, because we got it, leaked through certain media people, and then it came out, and then the whole thing also came out. See, one of the things that I have not understood, while I've looked at it in detail and I've found a lot of discrepancies, unfortunately, one of the things that I've not understood, and I think I should ask Dr. K.P. Kannan about this is, Professor, see, in the preliminary feasibility report, the EIRR, whatever it is, and I understand it in some sense, was 14.5, and after the sensitivity analysis, there were 4 sensitivities. I mean, 3 sensitivities and the combined test. It came down to 9.11, and the ENPV, I think a 30-year rate was negative 15,672 crore, or 1,56,000 million. And when it came to the feasibility report, it was 16.08, sensitivity analysis after that it was 9.52. Still the ENPV was negative 12,000 crore. Now, soon after this, in a year's time, the project, when I looked at the project, there was this cost estimates of all the, the structures that are built, which are halved or even drastically reduced. I mean, very explicitly reduced. The riderships was hiked up. The alignment was completely changed to make it look cheaper and more profitable. And at the end of the day, the DPR shows a very high, and Dr. Thomas also pointed it out, Isaac sir also pointed it out. The EIRR for 50 years went up to 24%, unprecedentedly high, and an ENPV of 14% was something around 19,000 crores. And the sensitivity analysis, all the 4 sensitivity analysis that they came out, there was no negativity in it. It drastically changed from being very negative to positive after demonstrating all this fudging of data or manipulation of data. I mean, my question is simple. If this project has to go forward, don't you think there must be a serious external independent audit of all these reports?
I think Vijay Shankar wants to ask a question. I didn't allow him to. Vijay Shankar, you may unmute yourself and ask.
The question was to Dr. Thomas Isaac. I think that's been answered.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't have a...
I don't have.
So anyone else for Professor Kannan? I think you have...
May I ask you, sir?
Yes, please.
Sir.
Who is
I'm
it?
George Utte. I have to ask, in the IRR, you said that 80,000 passengers has to travel in the Circle Line to make it viable. And these people, most of this part will be coming from the existing railway line, so that the revenue of the existing railway line will be reduced. That means it is returning the employees, and the business will, the land will be reduced. Do you have done a study on that? Thank you, sir. This is my simple question.
Okay, shall I answer? Good that there are only 2 questions.
Yeah, yes, please answer those 2 questions, and I think we will wind up the discussion after this.
Yeah. So I will also then get in 1 minute extra for that. I think what Sridhar has asked about the different rate of returns that you find in the feasibility report and the DPR, both in terms of financial rate of return and economic rate of return. And I must very humbly submit here that Sistra doesn't seem to understand the difference between financial and economic rate of return. If you look at the detailed tables of the stream of costs and benefits of the economic rate of return, they call the cost social costs. But all the items of cost are capital costs, operating costs, replacement costs. I don't know, they call these pure capital, machinery, and other costs as social costs. Then when it comes to benefits, they go out of the way. They put pollution reduction benefit and they quantify it. That itself is problematic. Then accident reduction and then evaluation of that. So when it comes to benefit side, they are converting something which cannot be easily quantified into social benefits. And when it comes to cost, there is no talk about social costs, but only the actual capital and operating costs. If any a professional project evaluator will see that, they will ask, is this the way to prepare an economic rate of return? On social costs, let me tell you, and I think Isaac knows this fully, and my complaint about Isaac is, as a finance minister, did he interrogate these people who submitted this feasibility and DPR? Shouldn't he have asked these kinds of questions about what kind of costs and benefits you have put in? Now, one relevant social cost is 20,000 households or whatever is the number. They will be displaced from their ancestral or whatever their own property, house, agricultural land or non-agricultural land. Apart from quantifying the loss of output in terms of money, what about their trauma? And that's why you see in the social media, every location where the revenue people go and to implant the stones, they are fighting. The women of the households are going and fighting. What is the value of the psychic cost that they go through for leaving their village, their own land, their parents' memories? You can say if you raise this, then no project will be implemented. That's not the argument. The argument is, do you recognize these as legitimate social costs so that you can find much better alternatives? And when I do that questioning about myself, I see less and less relevance for this project. Now, Sridhar, what you have to do, or anyone have to do, is not to take the internal rate of return, either financial or economic, the face value. Unfortunately, Dr. Isaac has done it. I'm sure he will have a second look at it. But you interrogate the stream of costs and benefits as well as the items of cost that they claim to be. I have already said that some of the costs which the electricity board will incur, they have not. If the social cost is important, it is important. Will the government also include the cost of policing? Because large contingent of police is deployed to implant your revenue stones. Isn't it money cost for government to deploy so much of police? So the whole idea of social cost, if you take it further, all costs which the society have to have, whether it is money costs, other kinds of costs, or even psychic costs, will have to be. So that's why I don't spend much time into the minute calculations that this agency has done. Second, I will not cast any aspersion, but it is good to know that World Bank had once about to blacklist Sistra. And it is because of France, the French government's intervention, they got out of it. But that's a completely different thing. What I agree with you, Sridhar, is that this is what I want to tell Dr. Isaac also. We are not experts in everything that is written in this book. I agree. Whether it's carbon emission or sample survey. But why did the government of Kerala, especially the state planning board, which is supposed to be the agency for investment planning decisions, for recommending investment projects, vet them? Why didn't they get it vetted by an independent panel of experts? What prevented them? And India has so many experts in this field, engineering, economic, environmental, and so on. I also don't understand when you have DMRC, a much better competent and an age-old constituency we have in the Indian build railways for Nigeria, Iran, Iraq. These two public sector consultants were not. Right? Anyway, these are questions which will then take us to whole question of the political economy of rent seeking. I will not go into that. So please do not take the details of the figures that are given. Go by the principles of project evaluation and planning to determine priority. Within the priority, question of alternatives. Within alternatives, the alternative costs and benefits of projects. Dr. Isaac said that there is no opportunity cost of capital because it's a project loan. Isaac, there's a difference between finance and economics. I'm sure you know that. Not having project loan is a financial loss, an economic loss. If you want to raise 65,000 crores of rupees, you can raise it from the Indian money market as a loan. If you are confident of your project, not as a budgetary public debt, but as a project loan, as you say, of a K rate. Project banks in Kerala, because Indian banking is flush with money at the rate of interest, you don't have to go all the way to London to pay that. For Indian
Your voice getting cut in between. Your voice getting cut.
Professor Kannan, I think we are running very late, and we have another session which is starting.
Okay. Then I will come to the last question, the second question. I think SG Kuti asked about the passenger load, 80,000, and he said rightly, what happens to the loss of passenger load for the existing Indian railway system, whether that has been studied or not. I don't know whether it is studied, but the agency which prepared this DPR is putting it as a benefit for them, because people are shifting from low fare travel to high fare travel because of time. And therefore, that becomes the benefit of the new company. I think it is important to ask the question. There are many questions. That is what happens to the loss of the Indian Railways if this were to really take place. I'm sure it will not take place. If it is really hypothetically to take place, the loss of the railways, the loss of the KSRTC, which is running on loss, Dr. Isaac has been very happy to take this ERR of 24% and 14%, but he couldn't run on this public utility road transport system. Even in a single year, we have a profit. Not a profit, but a break even for the last 30 years or more. It has the largest share of accumulated losses in the Kerala. Kerala's public sector is a saga of draining money from the public sector. Empirically speaking, you look at the review of public sector enterprises.
Okay.
You will see that. And there are many other things which I have not spoken.
Yeah.
About the execution of the project. K-Rail is not going to execute this project or operate or maintain. They want to create another company. And they are not satisfied by making another company. They want to have a second company. If you read the in-between or even the straight lines in the DPR, they want to create a company for property development.
Okay, I think we need to stop now. I thank, actually, it is a very rich presentation by both the speakers. And, Professor Kannan had many more things to say, but I think we have to, because I can already see the speaker for the next session waiting. And so I think we need to stop it. Stop the discussions right now. There was some points.
The speaker for the next session, the respected Dr. Ramchandran, has no opinion on K-Rail. Vice Chairman of the Planning Board has no opinion in public. He has not made a single statement.
Dr. Kannan,
shame.
Dr. Kannan, you really have no, you have no justification saying that at all. You have no justification saying that at all.
You
don't read the. I don't think you read the document.
He has no views on the reconstruction of Kerala. No views on Kerala.
Dr. Kannan,
by the rising public debt of Kerala. I just don't know.
Dr. Kannan, if you read as much as you talk, then maybe you'd read some of the documents of the planning board.
Yeah, I think
after the flood,
if you read half as much as you talk, perhaps you'd know a little more. Please inform yourself better. Please inform yourself better.
Made an announcement after the floods that they will revamp and rewrite the 13th five-year plan in accordance with the reconstruction.
I think I have to mute everyone now.
I'm actually glad to say I can't hear you.
Yes, I thank both the speakers, and I think we need to go for the next session. And I thank both Dr. Thomas Isaac and Professor Kannan. I think it's been a very rich, and I also thank all the people who participated. You have come in such large numbers. It's a very difficult topic. emotions are also linked to some of the debates. And so thank you so much. And very sorry to Dr. V. K. Ramchandran for keeping him waiting. And, and